So this video is going to be more about building a discussion around this because I want to know what your insights are on this as well. And I guess I should just come out and say, this video is not really going to be a how to use this tool in its current form. Blackmagic did a video on how to use the tool. If someone's working hard on a project, I really don't like trying to, be negative towards it. That's for someone else to do. But there are a lot of things in here which just don't make sense to me. So like I said, I want this to be a conversation. I want to hear from you guys. Write it down in the comments. Let me know what you guys use this for, if it's similar to another editing program that you've used in the past, and if this is something that you're going to be using in the future, if they change a couple of things that I kind of found that didn't make much sense. So let's just dive in and add some footage into this. All right, so here's my footage. Now, all of this is just stock, so there's no audio with this. So over here, you're not going to see the waveform, but we'll take this over to the normal editing tool. And let's say we just take a clip and we bring it down, right? So they say you can do that, right? It makes perfect sense, right? Bringing it down. Now, why this is right in the middle, it didn't really make much sense to me, but I do remember people asking me in the past, like, how can I have my playhead not move, but the timeline move? Well, now they introduced that. I've used Vegas back in the early 2000s, and then I went to Premiere, and I used Premiere for a long time. And then once DaVinci started to have its different tool sets with editing, I then came over and I started using DaVinci for the editing side. So I haven't really had much experience with a playhead just sitting like this. Maybe other people have edited this style. What was said was this is going to be a completely different style of editing, and I really believe that. So if you look at the edit page, right, and the majority of other editors, I kind of look at that as playing the guitar, right? There's a ton of different things that you can do. Like you have multiple strings, you can do a bunch of different things. And then when you come over to the edit page, it kind of does the same thing. Like a guitar makes noise, right? It makes music, but it's like learning how to play the guitar, but then being given a banjo and being told to play it. Like it's played completely differently, right? So if I was an editor and I have to use the cut page, it's completely different style of editing, right? So it would really take some legitimate time to sit and work with this to deem it if it's faster or not. If we're going to the whole, I forget what the exact wording that was used, but that watching YouTube videos about editing was painful because it was just a bunch of clicking. Now, with editing, obviously there is a bunch of clicking, but once you start to use these tools, you use a lot of keyboard shortcuts once you start to get into that rhythm and you make your own keyboard shortcuts, and things get really quick. When I edit, I edit pretty quick. When I make YouTube videos, I can't use keyboard shortcuts. I learned that early on. If you look at the comments in my early videos, a lot of people say because I use the color panel, I'm using my Wacom tablet, I'm using keyboard and mouse, and I'm using all these shortcuts. And people are saying like, oh, I can't follow because you're clicking or doing things that are off screen. So I quickly learned that I have to use a keyboard and mouse, or I have to use a mouse mainly to click on as many things as possible so people can follow, right? And if you know the shortcuts, then you just use the shortcuts and you go from there. So when I edit, I'm just using my shortcuts, and I thought that it was pretty quick. So this is supposed to be a quick way of like editing ish, but there's a lot of, so what I said is I'm going to take some time and try to do an edit quick and see why this was made, right? And they're talking about revolutionizing editing and doing these different things, and sure, let's try it. So I jumped in and I started working with these different clips. So I was looking at this and I was like, okay, let's add in a title. So I came over, I just grabbed the text plus tool, right? Not really thinking much. And I was like, okay, let's edit this, right? So I got my title and I was like, oh shit, how do I change this? And it took me a while to figure this out. I had to go and watch the Blackmagic videos.
The cut page puts all the controls you need in one strip below the viewer. You get transform tools for resizing and picture-in-picture effects, as well as controls for dynamic zoom, audio and video effects, and text all in one place.
And there should be a text tool here to edit this, and there isn't. And I was very confused, so I was like, okay, well that doesn't make much sense. Let's grab one of these. And I drop it down. I was like, oh shit, how do I edit this, right? There's no way. So I was like, okay, well I have to go over to the edit page to edit it, right? So I come over here, I click in here, and I start to edit it, right? So I was like, okay, fine. And then I actually don't have audio on this. Let me grab a clip that has audio. So I'll grab a clip and I'll bring it in, and this clip has audio. So let's just add this in and we'll come over here and look at it, and you can see the audio here, right? And I was like, okay, so let's add a compressor, right? So I add compressors to audio. So let's come into here and let's go into effects. Here's my compressors, and I just add one of my compressors in, boom, add it in, right? And I'm like, okay, I change it and then I exit, right? And I'm like, oh shit, I need to change that compressor again. Well, how do I do that? I can't click on anything. Come in here, it's not here. I'm like, fuck, how do I change that? So I would just have to go back to the edit page, get access to it, come over to the edit page, come into here, come over, and then here's my my compressor settings, right? So I was like, okay, that's weird. You know, I gave it some more time and I was like, okay. For some reason, I then came in and I grabbed a normal text and I brought that in, right? And I click on it, come into here, boom. Now I have the ability to open up the inspector. So now I can edit that one piece of text. But I was like, okay, what about all of these other things? How do I start doing that? Oh, then you click on it. Oh, there it is. So now we can open this. And now I have access to that. Okay, cool. Well, let's go back and look at this. So I come back to here. Oh, still can't do these. So, okay, so it seems, you know, kind of strange. Now it's showing this, and before it wasn't, right? So that's kind of bizarre. But then I was like, okay, let's see if the way in which I would normally edit this, if how it works. So typically I would be fast forwarding and deem like this. Okay, so I want to cut here, right? And then let's get rid of this. Oh wait, what? I can't ripple cut to the beginning. So this is what I would be doing if I'd be doing that same thing. That I would be doing a ripple cut. So when I would be normally editing, I would, you know, be fast forwarding through something. I'd be like, boom, okay, cut here. Let's come back a little bit. Okay, we'll ripple that, right? So I deem that as being pretty quick, right? So you're watching something, you're going, okay, let's back that up, cut here, right? Let's bring it up. Okay, we need to cut that, boom, right? So that's how I would normally go about editing like a clip that I would need to edit. Like I'd cut that and keep going. And then at the end here, I would just cut the end of it off, right? And then we could come back and we could click and then, you know, go back. But this is the way in which that I would edit. It's kind of weird because over here, I can just use the blade tool to cut, but I can't ripple it. So that was a little weird. And like for my editing style, that's kind of something that I would be doing. But you still can't, any of the Fusion titles, you can't do anything with. And if you've ever seen my website, that's something that, you know, I use a lot because I build the title. So not having access to it here is kind of confusing. Like you can still add them in, but you can't edit them. It's a little weird. Because in their video, they use the Fusion titles to do like wipes. So like I think I have one in here when I was first making them.
2D and 3D title templates can be added and customized to add drama and excitement to your project.
So I have like this as a transition. And if we look at this, this should like be the transition over it. And then, you know, it transitions out. But let's talk about the it not really running that great. But yeah, so like I would have like these kind of transitions, but it kind of sucks that I can't actually come in here and edit it. So that was kind of confusing to me. But the main thing is it's like you just got to spend time with this. And I'm like, okay, well, what if you start to have like a pretty in-depth edit here? Like how many different layers can you start to get until this becomes like too hectic? Like I don't know. Like it starts to get real weird. Like I don't really, there's probably some way to like key through all of these somehow, you know what I mean? Like there's probably shortcuts to key through these, but I don't know, it's just kind of weird. My big thing is a lot of my edits will have like lots of cuts in them. My colors don't even work. So I can't even change the colors. Like if I come over here, I could highlight stuff and change the color of it. The colors don't work over here. I mean, they're colored, but like my color shortcuts don't work here. I don't know, there's a couple of like weird things. My biggest question to you guys is, who is this designed for? They said it's designed for high-end commercial editors. Without learning this new culture of editing, I can't say that this is going to speed up my workflow just because I'm so used to the other way. I don't know. If I ever had two different things like this, because one of the things that they were talking about is this edit view, right, where you can see the whole thing. Let me show you how I would set up a project. So if I had multiple bins here, right, so like let's make a new bin and call it outside, right? So like let's say we had shots, obviously all of these are really outside, but let's say we had shots that they were outside, right? When I'd be working on a timeline, this is how I would do this. I would take all of these shots and then they would get dragged in, right? And then I would come into here and I'd make multiple timelines. So we would have our master timeline. We'd click over here and then we would have our master timeline and our other timeline. So this was outside. So let me just change this quick. And then we would just put the outside one down here. And this is how I would typically be working on a project. So I would just have my footage here, and just like how they were talking about this little guy here, this is how I set up projects when I was working on reality TV. So I would have down here, I would have all of that location. So like let's say it was B-roll. I would just come through here, look at all of the shots, and you know, I would run it pretty quick, look through and say, okay, well that's the shot that I would need. And then let's actually bring this up. I would then bring it up here and bring it into my edit and have it cut however I want. And that's kind of how I would do that sort of. What the hell is that thing? That's interesting. And like, so this timeline would never get edited, but I might come through this one and say, okay, that's one that I would be interested in using, that one, this one, and this one, right? So I could just, then when I found the right spot, bring them in just like that, you know, have whatever. And then I would just bring that in just like that. And that's kind of sort of the same way that they were talking about having, you know, this and having all of your clips in one thing. One thing that I did like is this whole source override, or no, this one. place, I don't remember which one it was. Maybe it was a source override, where it would just place it on top in the next track. I thought that was a pretty clever way of doing it, but it wasn't something that I typically use. This is the way in which, when I was working on a project, that I would deal with that kind of sort of situation. So I just thought that was kind of weird, because this is how I did it. I would have multiple timelines, and this is how I did it, not really so much in DaVinci, but when I was working on this project, it was mainly in Premiere. I would have multiple timelines like this, with each location, each scene. So when they went from one room to the other, if there was like a big like dialogue portion or whatever. I really want to know from you guys how this is used. I reached out to Blackmagic, but no real response. So I would really like to hear from you guys, because like watching the videos, like I understand the pitch for it, but really using it, like for other editors, other actual editors, not anyone that is trying to push this. I want to know what other editors think about this when you edit, play with this, and I want to know what your views are on this, because maybe I'm missing something. There are a couple of like little things that make things easier. Like, are these things really necessary? Not so much, but they make it easier, because they're just like, boom, right there, instead of having to dive into the inspector if you don't know what the inspector is. Like, they're just there. Is it a way to edit easier? I don't know. I can kind of go in circles with this, but I just kind of feel like it's very limiting. And I feel, at least the way in which I've been editing, I feel like this is slower. I really would like some input, because this was like the big feature. There's a lot of other features in the rest of DaVinci, you know what I mean? There's a lot of features in there, and I'll dive into those, but this was, a big new flashy thing that they were showing at NAB, and I can't wrap my head around it. So there's a couple of like interesting things, like these are kind of interesting. If you have a small amount of footage, I don't know about if you have a lot of footage, how realistic this kind of view actually is to use. I really feel like I'm missing something with this, and I just can't connect what that is. Or maybe I'm not. I don't know. It's pitched as being something for high-end editors, but I don't see why. Because I feel like high-end editors would be using different macros, shortcuts, and I feel like this is very limiting on the tool set in which DaVinci has to offer. There are a couple of like really cool like little features here and there, but I still don't know what to think about this. I'm asking, my whole audience, or whoever ends up seeing this, enlighten me. Anyone that does use this, how they use it, how it's made things better, or is this something that also doesn't make sense to you? But I think that kind of covers it. Like I said, I would like this to be a discussion. I'm kind of curious if this is something that you guys seem that's useful to you. If it's just like a watered down version of the edit page that seems very constricting like I do. Like, what are your views on this? I know Blackmagic sometimes watches my videos. I'd be curious to see what they had to say to it, if anyone wants to reach out to me. Is this page kind of inspired by another application, maybe a completely different edit culture that I'm not aware of, that I personally haven't been introduced to in the past? Maybe I'm just missing something there. But yeah, if you guys have any input, what you guys think about this, would you use it? Am I not really viewing this the right way? Maybe there's a better use case that I'm not thinking of where this would actually be useful. And I'd be more curious for the actual editors that are out there that do actual edit work, and not so much the people that are trying to push this so much as like a new feature and revolutionary. Like, because I know that when Final Cut Pro 10 came out, a lot of the pros kind of walked away from it because it seemed like it was like watered down. A lot of functionality didn't make sense for a lot of people. I was never really one of those editors, but I did remember reading the reviews, and that's why a lot of people went to Adobe. Is it something like that? Or maybe, you know, there actually is a use case for this, that actual editors will stop using the edit page primarily and start using this cut page. For me, I can't see why I would use it when a lot of the keyboard shortcuts that I have set, the commands themselves don't work in the edit page or this cut page. Kind of curious, you know, what everyone else thinks of this, if they feel the same way as me or not. That's kind of really all I got for you. I wish I could come to a better conclusion, but maybe in a later video, once they, you know, release a couple more public betas and they kind of, you know, fix a couple of things, maybe introduce a couple more tools. I can't really see them introducing a lot of tools, because then you're just kind of making a second edit page, and the cut page is supposed to be like a simplified version. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. Let's get a discussion going. Maybe I'll come back to this after, you know, I get some kind of input as to how you guys use this, if you don't use it, if you do. And yeah, we'll see where this leads us into the future. But DaVinci Resolve has a ton of other functionality and features that I'm excited to dive into, play around with, that I actually deem as useful and, you know, really worth updating to DaVinci Resolve 16. So in the future videos, I'm going to be diving into those, but there was a lot of interest over this because the hype was over this edit page. And, you know, it really didn't come to any type of good conclusion or tutorial video or anything like that. But let me know what you guys think about this one. With that being said, my name's JR, and thanks for watching.